To share from God's Word, to reflect with you a little bit, something of the conversations I've been having with your leadership team, and to put ourselves into God's hands and see where He takes us. I'm Mike. You know what I do for work, and let me tell you just a tiny little bit about myself. I've been reflecting recently about my life's journey, and one of the things that I realised is that throughout my life, journeys have been really important. I was a Boy Scout, and I got introduced to the big wide world when I was a teenager. And I've been kind of pursuing outdoor pursuits and little journeys of one kind or another throughout my life. When we were raising our kids, it was a little bit more difficult, but the urge to travel and to explore has returned as the kids have grown up and so on and so forth. I don't want to exaggerate it. I'm not a kind of Scot of the Antarctic or an Edmund Hillary who's climbed Everest or anything. But in my own small way, in my own small life, exploring and going on journeys has been a really important thing. I'm going to tell you two stories this morning. The first one is one of my stories, just to kind of illustrate the point, if you like. Journeys have been really important to me. And as I've done this bit of reflecting on life, I've realised that they've had great significance and shaped the way I think and the way I respond to God. That as I have travelled, that I've met God in ways that perhaps I would never have met him in other ways. And I have grown and I have changed as a person. One small illustration, a snapshot, if you like. I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. My wife and I were on holiday together down in Croyd in Devon. Not exactly an exotic destination or anything like that, or a place for any great adventure. Anyway, it was a bit of a murky, misty day, and Sarah didn't want to go out from our little kind of bungalow type place that we were staying in. And I didn't have an awful lot of energy, but I thought, I need to get out. I can't be in this kind of neck of the woods and just stay indoors all day. And so I got in the car and I wanted to go somewhere that I've not been to before. So I drove from Croyd to Westwood Home. And I thought, I haven't got much energy. The weather's not that great. I'm just going to walk for about an hour down the coast and then turn around and come back again. I promised that I'd be back about 6 o'clock. I was starting my little bit of a journey at about 12:30. So I plodded and I plodded. I didn't have much energy. I wasn't feeling very enthusiastic. But as I started walking, I started to kind of, feel a bit better, a bit more chipper. And I got into my stride, and the longer the day went on, the better I was feeling. The sun started to rise, and I was feeling better. The weather was feeling better. I was having a great time. And I walked and I walked and I walked, and I got to about the 2-hour point, at which point I thought, I'm going to have to decide what to do in a minute. By this stage, I was raring to go. And in the distance, I could see this little community kind of stuck on the edge of the cliff. I thought, wonder where that is. So I got my map out. I brought it with me here. Just an ordinary survey map. And I had a little look and thought, I don't know where that is. I've got to the end of the map. If I go any further, I'm going to walk off the edge of the map. So I thought, I wonder what that is. And on the back of these maps, you can, it doesn't give you any detail at all. And I thought, I don't know what that must be. That must be the village of Clovelly, stuck to the edge of the cliff. And that must be, I don't know, I'm just guessing from looking at it in the distance. That must be 6 or 7 miles away from here. I could see it way across the bay. Do you know, I can't get there and get back again. But I've never been there, and it looks really interesting. And the scenery is getting more interesting as well. It's going up and down a bit more. I wonder whether I could walk there, get a bus back, and still get home by 6 o'clock. And something inside me said, go, go, go. And so I started walking very fast as my little legs would take me. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked, and I get more and more excited and exhilarated. And all those instincts within me to explore something that is new kicked in. And there I was, almost running at one point, and I arrived right on the edge of Clovelly and walked into the tiny little village. Went to the bus stop. There was one. I realised that I'd missed the last bus. The last bus of the day had already gone, so I thought, well, there's only one way out of this, one way in which I'm going to get home. I'm going to have to go back up to the main road, which is about 1.5 miles away, and I'd have to see if I can hitch a lift back to my car. And as a youngster, and even today, actually, if I'm in an interesting place, I'm happy to hitch a lift. And so I ran to the road as fast as my little legs would take me, and thought, well, there's no way I'm going to get back by 6, but anyway, here we go. One of the things that I've learned about hitchhiking is the only way to get a lift is to stand and face the traffic where there's somewhere for a car to stop, face them, eyeball them, and hold your hand out. I got to the roundabout at which the main road went off, and I was walking down to find a suitable place. I just thought I'd stick my thumb out, and the very first car that passed me, a sporty silver Mercedes-Benz, stopped, and I ran up to it and he said, can you give you a lift? And I said, love for a lift, please. I'm trying to get back to Westwood Ho. He said, that's fine, I'm going that way. And off we went. And I had the most amazing conversation with this guy. He was a kind of a farming advisor. And I quickly discovered that he had recently come to faith. And his marriage had fallen apart, and that had set him on a journey of looking for God. And he had done all sorts of really interesting things in his journey looking for God, including going out to the Egyptian desert to be silent before God and to try and discover what his heart longed for. And I didn't really know it at the time. But God had arranged this lift for me so that I could bring a word of God to him. And it's not me saying that it was the word of God, but I just had the right word for him. And it was a really significant thing in his life. Anyway, long story short, he gave me a lift all the way back to my car. We exchanged telephone numbers in case he wanted to pick things up at a later date. And I got back in time for the tea at 6 o'clock. How amazing is that? I tell you the story because it illustrates what I have discovered time and time again when I go on journeys, bigger journeys. That when you step off the map into the unknown, to places like Japan, if you are open, you will discover new things, new vistas. You discover beautiful places that you would never discover if you stayed on the map in the tried and the tested and the familiar. And also extraordinary things happen. You bump into people. You discover God as your provider, that you, in ways that you would never know God as provider in the safe and the familiar territory of home or the familiar. God meets us when we're on journeys. So that's the first story. Second story is a much more important story than my little holiday adventure. A much more important story. It's the story of Abraham and how God met with him, and through him how the world was blessed. Abraham, or Abram, as he was originally known, was the first son of a man called Terah. He had 3 sons. He was born in a place called in the region of the Chaldeans. That's just up the road from Babel, as in the story of the Tower of Babel. It was a sophisticated place for its time. And it was the centre of worship for a pagan moon god. So Abraham, our hero of faith, was originally a pagan, an idolater, worshipping a foreign god. His father and his family had left this place called some time before. We're not entirely sure why they left, but they headed in the direction of Canaan. It may well have been because their particular area was under threat from some invading force. That's a possibility. Anyway, they set up in the direction of Canaan. And they got as far as a place called Haran, which was also a centre for the worship of this pagan moon god. And there they stopped. We don't know whether they intended to keep going at a later date, but there they stopped. Now, it's difficult for us to imagine this. And we're not supplied any detail whatsoever in the story as it is told in the scriptures. That a day came when the one true God, the maker of heaven and earth, spoke to Abram and said to him, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Walk off the map, in other words. Get up, pack up your stuff, and go. Now, it was a pagan. And we shouldn't think of this as a sort of a conversion story, as the kind of conversion story that we may have experienced. He didn't go down to the front of a Billy Graham crusade or any other such thing. But what we do know is that God got through to him. God spoke to him in ways that were absolutely certain as far as he was concerned. However it happened, Abram, who would become Abraham, knew that he had met someone beyond his previous experience. He was certain of it, so much so that he was willing to obey the voice and to move. He was certain enough to pack up all his stuff and set off to the west. Oh, by the way, he had acquired a lot of stuff and a lot of people who have become part of his extended family. So he had to slim it down, to give away stuff, to put stuff on eBay, and that stuff that he couldn't give away to go down to the tip. I wonder how many journeys he had to do going down to the tip. Who knows? Imagine it. 75 years old, experiencing a comfortable, expansive, settled experience. Perhaps he'd grown a little bit fat in his sedentary life, in his mature years. Then all of a sudden, choosing to uproot yourself and to go with your wider family and become a tent dweller again. He'd done it before as a teenager, but now at 75? Some of you, I suspect, know what it means to uproot yourself from your own land. And you know how insecure it makes you feel. He chose to do it at the age of 75. What made him do it? Well, it was a voice and a promise. It was that inner conviction that he'd encountered a being that was far greater, far more convincing than this so-called moon god that he'd previously worshipped. And it was a conviction that this being, this God, had promised him something that was beyond his imagination. The blessing of a family line that would number, well, more than the grains of sand. So he knew it. How did he? I don't know how he knew it. He just knew it in his knower. That's what we call faith, friends, isn't it? Having a conviction on the inside when we can't always explain it. Well, further down the track of his life, after further, more expansive experience of this God who got in touch with him, after many miles and many mistakes, and he made some fairly big ones, well, God made an agreement with Abraham, a covenant we call it, and gave him a new name, Abraham, which means father of many. He gave him a new name to illustrate the covenant that he was making with, the promise that he was giving to him. And the story of Abraham became the story of Israel. And the story of Israel is the story from which our story, the Christian story, emerged. God kept his promise to multiply his offspring, and to bless the whole world through his offspring. Abraham answered the voice that he had heard and set off to the place that he didn't really know the destination of. And the result of that step of faith was blessing. Blessing for him, blessing for his family, and through him, blessing for the whole world. Well, we are many millennia away from that. But we know in the life of the revelation that we've got in the scriptures, we know how that blessing came. It came through Jesus, who was a kind of an ancestor of Abraham, if you like. And that's how God has blessed the whole world. Abraham is often known as the man of faith, and so indeed he was. We often query, don't we, what faith looks like? Well, in this particular case, it's illustrated for us perfectly. Sometimes, often, it means leaving behind the familiar and the comfortable and setting off on a journey in a direction that we're not entirely sure it's going to lead us, and trusting that the God who calls will lead us as we journey and will bless us. I hope you know, by the way, that I'm not talking about literal journeys, although sometimes, in my particular case, God has met me on literal journeys. And God will meet you. What was your name? Sam. God will meet you as you journey. Keep your eye open. Keep your eye open. Keep your eye and your antennae kind of attuned to notice how God is meeting you in new and unfamiliar ways. The next year is going to be a really big one for Ilkeston Baptist Church. And you know the reason for that, don't you? It's been referred to in this service, and you know the fact that Michael and Enid are going to be leaving this church. That Michael has already announced that he will be retiring from the pastorate of this church by the end of June at the very latest. And this means that big change is round the corner, coming ready or not. Michael has served the church here sacrificially for many years. And it might be that that some of you have been around longer know that Michael hasn't drawn an income from the church for a good few years now. And he is to be honoured for it. I hope you are thankful for the service that he has offered. In talking with your leaders, it's clear that the church can't afford to replace Michael with a full-time paid pastor, or even a part-time paid minister, half-time paid minister, and that this situation is unlikely to change in the foreseeable future. In chatting with your deacons and with Michael, I'm told that probably the maximum that you will be able to afford on your current income level is the equivalent of about 1 day a week of a person's time. From my experience, it's not possible to do a pastor's job on just 1 day a week. Not a traditional pastor's job in the way that Michael has exercised it over many, many years. So big change is coming. And it may well be that the future of the church in the foreseeable future is without a paid pastor. If you don't have a paid pastor, big change is coming. So when Michael and Enid leave the church, you'll be faced with a choice. You can stay where you are in the pattern of church that you have known, and which presumably you love, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You can stay with what you know, doing church in ways that are familiar, but without the resource of Michael and Enid here. That will be very, very difficult. I'm not going to say it will be impossible. That would be a stupid thing to say. But just imagine it, taking out the resource of a person who is dedicating themselves to leading the church and to resourcing you and to preaching and offering pastoral care. It's difficult to imagine how you can just carry on exactly as you were whilst taking that kind of resource out of the church. Sure, you are going to be left with two dedicated leaders who will encourage you to find your ministries in the life of the church. But it's difficult to imagine how things would continue as they are. The alternative is to accept that you can't stay where you are, carrying on as though nothing had happened, and instead to embrace that change has taken place and to move, to go on a journey of discovery and to see where God leads you, to go on a journey and to discover how God might lead you to be church and do church in a different way, trusting that God will lead you and provide for you on the journey. Listen up and listen carefully, please. Might it be that the God of Abraham, who is the same God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, is inviting Ilkeston Baptist Church to go on a journey of discovery? That he is saying to you, as he said to Abraham many millennia ago, go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. That God is calling you to set out, not knowing where you are going, but trusting that he will show you the place in good time. Sounds a bit risky and scary, doesn't it? Faith often feels that way. But might it be that actually going on such a journey is the safest bet for you and the most secure thing that you can do? And that actually staying where you are with the familiar is a more risky thing to do. Sometimes staying put when the circumstances dictate that we go is a riskier thing to do than going into the unknown and trusting that God will lead the way. Could it be that God is inviting you to go on a journey, and that if God is calling you on such a journey, that only your yes would lead to the blessing that God wants for you? Over the last, I'm not quite sure how long it is, Lisa, Michael, 6 months or so, we've met a few times to have a bit of a chat and to prayerfully consider what might be. And so Mel and Lisa and myself will be meeting. One idea that has come to the fore as we've talked together, which seems kind of as though it might be right to us, is that we look for someone who can come alongside you as you go on a journey to a new and currently unknown destination. An experienced traveller, if you like. Someone who knows how to use map and compass by day and read the stars by night, so that you can travel safely. Someone who will travel with you and seek to discover where you can pitch your tent along the way and where you can eventually settle down into a more permanent place. Just for clarification, because I'm talking pitching, I'm not necessarily talking about uprooting from this particular building. Well, you never know what might happen when you go on a journey, but that's not what's in our mind as we use this kind of illustration. So, if you like, it's the picture of a kind of a tour guide, come fellow traveller, come expedition leader who goes with you on a journey into the unknown. if you've never been a traveller, maybe this doesn't resonate with you at all. I hope in that case you're a bit of a sports fan, because it's the only other analogy I can think of. You're probably familiar with the idea of a player coach. It's mainly a footballing and rugby kind of term. Someone who has a long career, and towards the end of their career they start coaching the team as well. They could just hang up their boots and coach the team, tell them strategy and work with them to bring the best out of the team. But they've still got playing years ahead of them. So they do both roles at the same time, using their experience as a player to do the coaching and still able to play the game as well. Maybe they come on as a high impact player because they haven't got 90 minutes in their legs any longer. They can still play, but they can coach too. That's the kind of person who we might look for to come alongside you if you choose to go on a bit of a journey. And their main role could be to work with your leadership team as they lead the church and as they go into the unknown, working with the leadership team to help the church play a different kind of game, given the fact that your game-making midfielder, golden boot player is stepping off the pitch. Let's see your toes twinkling then. Do you get the idea? Somebody to come alongside you, not as the minister, but to work with you, and particularly to work with your leaders, to offer some coaching, suggest some new ways of playing the church game. I'm going to use this as an illustration because it's for real, this, isn't it? It's not a game. And to help you find new ways of being church. As we've talked about these ideas, we've increasingly sort of come, well, it's not a firm conclusion, but we are coming towards the conclusion that this could be a really good way forward for the church, if we can find the right person. There probably aren't millions of people who could do this kind of work. They probably need paying, but maybe a day a week will be enough for them to fulfil this role. And we understand that those resources are available. They probably need to be either a Baptist minister or somebody who has exercised considerable leadership in a Baptist church to be able to offer the kind of guidance that would be needed. We're thinking this might be something that is worth exploring. So here, I'm going to stop here actually. We will pray in a moment about these kind of things. But do you want to ask a question or make a comment on any of the stuff that I said so far today? While Mother goes to have a little chat in the corner. Has anybody got a question or a comment or a reaction of any kind?